Jason Coulthard, former homicide and international organized crime enforcement detective, here with us. And we're going to talk about how to recover from operational stress injuries. Here is PTSD Self-Healing Show, and I welcome you, Jason. Thank you so much to be here for the second time. And yeah, and I know that's for the first time you've been in my summit, and I really, really enjoy your talk. And I said, oh, it's better we have something in detail. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I'm very blessed to be here to share my perspective of the way that I've been able to heal naturally from a lot of injuries. So I look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
So tell me about yourself, Jason. Especially, I really wish to know about operational stress injuries. You had in your story, what happened to you, and how did you become so supportive for other families recover from PTSD?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question. I was a Toronto police officer for 21 years in downtown Toronto is where I started my career. I worked in the front lines, worked in the major crime unit doing break-in enters and robberies and street-level drugs for a number of years. Then I went to the homicide unit for a year where I worked on the Jane Creba murder. And then I went to the major drug squad where I worked on the heroin team. Where we basically investigated the importing and exporting of controlled substances from their native countries, heroin, cocaine, ephedrine, and we also dealt with clandestine laboratories in the greater Toronto area. Then I was promoted to sergeant after 3 years of that, did that for a year in uniform, and then I came back to the major drug squad where I was now a detective in charge of the same heroin team. And I was there for 5 years, dealing with projects like Project Kiar, which is Farsi for pickle. We had an organization that was bringing opium inside of pickles from Iran. Very, very intriguing operation. And then Project Infinity came out of that one. So I was exposed to a lot of international organized crime and how it affects us here locally and also internationally. Like, for example, the poppy flower is what is grown abundantly in Afghanistan and different parts of Iran, and it's illegal because they say that it's supposed to be. And I can go into depth about that one day, and we can talk about that too. But that's a problem. We have a third world country that can produce a poppy flower that is a natural plant that man has made illegal. And now we have an abundance of opioid overdoses.
Not in Iran, Jason.
Here in Canada.
Yeah, here is legal. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it's that war on drugs that I think has to have a different perspective to look at. You know, are we making a difference? Are we doing a good thing by enforcing the Drugs Enforcement Act in the various countries around the world? You know, from my perspective, and you asked about my trauma, so that's directly related to my trauma. A lot of the things that I did in my career did not have a benefit on mankind in the aspect that we would do something on an international level and things would happen. If you take a commodity of drugs out of the market, such as an abundance of opium, all of a sudden the opium goes from $18,000 a kilogram up to $53,000 a kilogram in one day. And you lock up a certain organization, now you have another 2, 3, 4 organizations vying for the control of that. They don't sit down and talk and have sandwiches, you know. They have a different way of dealing with business. And I saw that side of the stuff, the tortures, the kidnappings, the mutilations, you know, like the extents that people go to in this organization. That's what truly hurt me, you know, and to see the cause and effect when you go back to your homeland and to Afghanistan and places like that, especially during the end of the 2000s when we had our Afghan war and the Gulf War and things like that. And there's a lot of unsettled territory within the Middle East. There's not much central control. So everybody was just doing their thing in there. And the people in the land, they're getting the brunt of it. They're getting their crops cleared out every 3 months. They got $300-400 to survive. Now they got nothing because we're on a war on drugs, you know. And that's where my trauma came from. I was a homicide detective for 3 years in downtown Toronto. I saw they're also the brunt of humanity. The worst that people could do to people, obviously, is homicide. But that wasn't as traumatic for me as looking at the international drug war and the broader the broader aspect of it, and even in the alleyways of Toronto, of Peterborough, of any little town, any big town, who's in there? They're the addicts. We have a Controlled Drugs and Substances Act that tells us that we have to go and arrest these people. We have to secure evidence off of them. So if they just bought a 20 piece of crack cocaine and they decide to put it in their throat, we have to secure the evidence. That's what the law says. You know what? That's what hurt me. That's what hurt me. And now I've come at it from a different perspective of knowledge and truth, and looked at it from, a different level. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that the institution that I work for told me to do this and told me to do this. And I did this and I did that because they told me to do those things, righteous things, lawful things, right? Like the Mental Health Act. One of my traumas is from wrestling with a 92-year-old woman, because I had a Form 1 issued by a doctor who said that she has to go to the hospital to be assessed. So I got a job. I got a uniform on. I have the law. I have to take you to a safe place. Why didn't she want to go to that safe place?
Why? I don't know.
Valid question. I know, because I was locked in the psychiatric unit for 21 days in Oshawa. I know what happens in there. I was committed under a Form 1, a Form 3, and a Form 4. I paid attention when I was in there. I wrote stuff down on little broken crayons and little pieces of paper because that's all they give me. It's terrible the way that our mental health is treated. Let me give you an example. Do you ever see police officers, firefighters, or paramedics responding to a call for a car accident victim who went to the hospital 3 days earlier, and they gave them pills and put them back in the same intersection? No.
Oh.
They go in, they have an MRI, they have an X-ray,
Yes.
They get specialists, they get looked at, they make a plan, they heal them, they address their wounds and the underlying reason why their arm is broken. Not in the mental health world. In the emergency mental health world, I'm speaking specifically of, in my own perspective. I'm not making a blanket statement because I see things through my own eyes, but I've done a tremendous amount of research. And it really disturbs me the way that people are spending so much money on an industry that is clearly not healing people.
Because the mental health never look acute. It's always, they think, oh, the person looks healthy, but it's not.
100%.
And as I'm practicing functional medicine, I can see that even people with mental health really have a lot of underlying physical issues as well. So they are not healthy as well.
Yeah, and actually what I've come to learn is that our physical signs, symptoms, syndromes, and diseases, 80% of them are caused by this, and then by your stomach, and then by smashing into a tree, right? So you got to pay attention to what you put into your body, what you believe, what you absorb, because your chemistry changes. If you're in a constant state of fear, how does your respiratory system change? You're 6 years old, your parents throw you in the forest. Okay, your chemistry changes, right? If you're in a constant state of rejection, your chemistry changes. Pay attention to those things up here and in here and reconcile them with the truth. We're loved, we're accepted, we're forgiven, we make mistakes. There's a reason why we're injured, and we have to figure those things out. Not a lot of doctors talk about those things. Like, for example,
totally agree.
Me personally, I've been going through a lot of gastrointestinal issues because I've gone through a marital breakup. I'm going through a divorce. So the signs and the symptoms of that are directly related to that. Guilt, shame, false burden bearing, and denial. Those are directly related to gastrointestinal issues. And that's me. That's real. If you look at other people, ask them. A lot of people who have eczema or any psoriasis skin conditions, they probably haven't been nurtured properly in their life, and they don't nurture themselves because of that lack of nurturing towards them. The fear of abandonment, asthma, that is that thing. Oh my God, I'm alone. So now we have how many COVID-related deaths in the hospital because old people are left there with no one to talk to, a window that they can knock on the window. This is what we need to learn. There's so many things in our environment that actually impact our chemistry. Our skin is a membrane, and every cell beyond that is also a membrane. So when you put calcium in your body, that's calcium. It has a receiver, it has an effector, it does it what it's supposed to do. But when you can go get milk off the shelf that's been there for a month and a half or maybe 4 months, because it's got to come from one end of the country to the other, and they put things in it, all of a sudden your receiver goes calcium and it goes, whoa, there's other stuff. What am I going to do? Autoimmune diseases, gluten allergies, like lactose intolerance. We're not eating the things that we used to eat. They're genetically modified. They're mass produced. We have wheat that's 3 feet tall instead of 6 feet tall. They don't even let the seed break apart the germination process of wheat. And that's why we have gluten allergies. One of the main contributing factors, I believe. So
Exactly. Jason, I remember when I was a child, we used to eat everything. And I used to eat cookies, and we never get fat, or we never had any like serious health issues because everything was more natural. Right now, whatever you eat is processed. Even bread is not as healthy as it should be.
even
So
the
it's,
seed itself,
yeah,
even the seed itself isn't the seed,
yeah,
because it's changed over time. We have labradoodles, right? They weren't given here originally by God. They were given they were made for profit. Industrialization. You look at the marijuana plant, for example, that was made illegal in 1937 in the Marijuana Tax Act. Henry Ford actually made and fueled vehicles with hemp in the 30s. All of a sudden, this law comes in and says you can't do that. 20 plants were originally put here on Earth. Now we have over 5,000 strains of marijuana that are there for profit, for money. Like, not a lot of people know about that plant. It's a sacred plant. It's a very specific plant. It's a very dangerous plant if you don't use it properly. A lot of people don't educate themselves properly, and they just go with the flow. It's not about that. You're an individual. You have to research your own body and how you react to things, not talk about Charlie Brown or Lucy over there, but take their things into consideration and look at you. Nobody knows you but you, not the doctor, not anybody. And I went through so much of that where people are telling me, oh, you need this pill, you need this pill. I'm like, hold on, what do I need? Have you asked me what I think I need? No.
teenagers, even I've heard about them, that with the marijuana or other drugs, unfortunately, they do it and they consume it here in Canada. And that's really saddened me because that's not the way. And I see in some families, it's very natural thing. They don't react properly to this issue, and I'm like, what? How can you be so careless about about your child that is going through this? And because yes, you use it for fun 1-2 times, but it's not fun after sometimes.
And that's
Yeah,
not
you're
what
gonna.
it's to be used for. Through my research, I've had to kind of reconcile a lot of things. Like, why were they able to keep me in the hospital? What laws and what system behind them allowed them to do that? And then being a drug officer, I went into marijuana grows for the part of my investigation, big ones, clandestine labs. I seized tons of it. I was told by somebody during my recovery, why don't you try marijuana? And I'm like, come on, man, look what I did. I was a cop, and then I tried it. Was it a journey to figure it out? Yes. Now I use it on a daily basis. I use it responsibly. I use it specifically, and I don't just smoke it because it's a bag there sitting that somebody gave to me. When I use it for the right purpose, which is to access the truth, to access love, and to get healing from it. So what I've done with myself in my own recovery is it actually helps me to what I call elevate my consciousness, or to transcend above the physical pain that I'm feeling. And in those times, I have what the Diagnostic Symptom Manual calls psychosis, or detachment, or schizophrenia. I am lifted by Jesus into the cosmos, And I am taken back to my trauma and I'm shown it from a different perspective, not my perspective, because during my rape, I was like this. I wasn't here. I didn't see all of these things. So in my healing, in my prayer time, in my quiet time, my meditation, my self-reflection, I asked from my heart. I said, God, I need to know. I need to know why I was raped as a 10-year-old boy, because it doesn't make sense to me. And I am traumatized by it. And all of a sudden, I was lifted in my mind and I was reattached to my trauma, which was very, very explosive. But I saw what happened. And I was told in this vision that I was removed from that trauma at that point because God didn't want me to experience it. But he showed me and he said, this is what happened. And I saw it and it was very impactful. And then God said to me, do you remember his brother? And I said, why do I care about his brother? Seriously. And he says, you will. And I said, okay, his brother, he drove a blue Firebird. He had the T-bar roof, he had the basement and the bed and the booze and the alcohol and the drugs and the porn. And then he says, watch this. And then my aggressor is getting assaulted by his brother. And then he is getting assaulted by whom I presume to be an uncle. And I'm bawling my eyes out in my quiet place, receiving this revelation of the cause and effect. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't become that because he was milking cows and shucking corn. There is a reason why things happen, and it wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. Nothing that I did was wrong. So in that moment of clarity, of elevation, I was able to heal. So if I ever saw my aggressor again, I would look him right in the eyes and I would say, I'm so sorry for what you went through. I forgive you and I love you. And I hope you're doing okay. You know, that's nothing. I'm 47 years old and that happened when I was 10 and I received that healing 2 years ago. Like that's my journey. And that's the way that I've been able to overcome that very, very confusing part of my life. And it carried on like for the last 35 years of my life in repetitive negative behavior that is a result of that trauma, the distrust in men, the distrust in women, not being able to build relationships with either side because of the different aspects of my injury. And it's getting to a different elevation of understanding where I've been able to obtain my healing. For example, in car accidents, when I've been in a situation where I'm not an octopus, there's 4 people in the car, one's dead, which is dad. There's 2 kids in the back that aren't in great shape. Mom's not in a very emotionally stable mindset at this point. And I only can do what I can do. I'm alone, you know, and that hurt me for a long time. Like, why was I put in that position alone? Where was everybody else? Blah, 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 blah. Why couldn't I, shouldn't I, da, 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 da. No, God said, come home. That's it, period. So that 8-year-old girl that I couldn't save because I was an octopus, God said, come home. Not my fault, not their fault, not their fault, not his fault, no. God said, come home. And that's because it was about my mother. You know, she passed away about 7 years ago when I was in the middle of a big international investigation that I was keenly interested in. And I neglected my family, you know, and that was also part of my trauma. I put so much effort into my job and that was who I was. I was this homicide detective. I was this international blah, 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 you know. No, man, I'm Jay. You know, I'm that. And it's been a hard journey for me to take those uniforms off, you know, and to say, no. You know who I am? I'm that 4-year-old boy who burned my house down by accident. That's where I had to get back to my first traumatic moment where my life went like that and changed.
Beautiful.
I would take that 4-year-old boy with me along my journey and have him right beside me. And every footstep that I take from now on, he's right here. He's watching. He's learning. And knew me. It changed me. It's not been easy. But
it's not easy. You've been through a lot, I can see. Okay, we have a few seconds break and we come back again.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to Panta Coulthard Transition channel and order my book Rules of Change for the Better. Tune up your mood and transform your life to reach your biggest dreams. So Jason, what are you doing now? right now after you finish with your detective status? What did you do?
Well, I started my journey towards healing, and that is a big journey, a big learning curve that I went through, and it's brought me to where I am today. So what I'm doing now is putting together a self-sustainable family revival retreat that's going to use natural renewable resources to heal our operational stress injuries, and a multitude of natural renewable resources such as equine therapy, canine therapy, ecotherapy, getting back in touch with earth, wind, fire, and water, art therapy in every form you could figure, whether it's journaling, singing, dancing, clay making, woodworking, soapstone carving, and also peer-to-peer support is a main focus of our recovery, being with like-minded people who understand us, not someone who has read a book and understands the book and throws pills at you in a hole and says, follow the instructions, but someone who's been in that hole, not that hole, sorry, but a very similar hole, because every hole is different, but it takes one to know one. So for me, a lot of my recovery has come from like-minded people who get me, people who have been assaulted when they're young boys. And there are a lot of us out there who were assaulted when we were young boys. So you're not alone. It's something that I think a lot of us go through, and having people who understand that injury and can help work you through that is so important. So now our first venture right now, we have 133 acres of land just north of Lindsay, Ontario, called New Hope Field of Dreams Family Revival Retreat. And we are in the grassroots stages of that right now, where what we're doing is we're building what I call a kibbutz style community, which is bringing together people for one purpose, which is to provide a solution for our mental health, and to do it out of love, not for money, not for recognition or entitlement, or anything like that. In fact, any organizations that have approached me who have that mindset, I thank them for their time and sent them to continue what they're doing, because everything that I'm being doing is out of love for people, and because I was humbled in that hospital, to say the very, very least of my experience. And that really gave me a different perspective. And through that pain and suffering that I've been through, it's just turned it into a burning love to just change things for the right reason. I'm not coming against any systems or any things like that. I'm just recognizing that there is an alternative, which is bringing a lot of things and people together for the right reasons. We're looking at, like I said, building a self-sustained community. Greenhouses are also part of this. Our nutrition base is going to be based on our endocannabinoid system and how terpenes found within everything that we eat interact with our body. Knowing the depth as to why we eat a bag of oranges at the halftime at a soccer game and not a turkey sandwich. And there's reasons behind all of that. And we want to educate people about limonene, about pinene, about myrcene, and how they're found in different fruits such as limes and lemons and oranges, and how they affect your body. And the myrcene, which is found in mangoes and avocados and other soft sort of fruits that help you to calm down. The limonene helps you to wake up, obviously. But it's fueling your body correctly. That's a main focus of what we're doing. We're filtering and fueling people's spirit, soul, which is their mind, will, and emotions, and their body, which is their brain, their heart, and their stomach, with proper nutrients, proper information. Everything in your environment needs to be filtered. Everything you see, you hear, you taste, you smell. So right at this particular moment, we're putting together 6 tiny log homes to start our first venture, which is equine horse therapy with Canpraxis. And Canpraxis is an equine therapy program out of Alberta, Canada, that's been running for about 11 years. In fact, it was a year ago this week that I was in Alberta taking part in the phase 2 of their program which is what we are installing at New Hope Field of Dreams, hoping to have it up and running by September of this year, where Steve Critchley is going to have 5 veterans or local heroes, first responders, come to take part in that program. So what I've been doing to accomplish that is getting local people like myself, other frontline workers, other community members, to volunteer their time to come to the retreat, which is Heaven's Gate Farm right now, which have 20 horses on it. And we've been forging pathways into the forest. So far, we have approximately 350 meters that we forged through there. And we're taking those trees and we're going to be building the log homes out of them. In this pathway that we're building, it's actually going to be called the Hero's Journey, a Pathway to Revival. So we're going to have an 8-step program that's going to have 8 stations within the forest where you're going to sit with your mentor, and they're going to take you through that step of recognition, which is the first one, recognizing that you're injured and where your injury comes from. And then the next one is taking responsibility for that injury. So it's very similar to a lot of the other 8, 10, and 12-step programs out there, but you're doing it with somebody right beside you the entire way. So that's what we're looking at doing immediately, is the pathways, but more importantly, the tiny log homes, so our overcomers could stay in there. Our further venture is putting in a nutrition center, which will be a central eating facility with a proper nutrition center, again, on the endocannabinoid system. We partnered with Produce for Heroes out of the Peterborough area, and their job is they produce food for heroes. About farming, natural foods. And what we're looking at doing in the future with a lot of other partners that are on our website as well, is putting together a formulative plan for individuals. So when an officer or a frontline worker, even a nurse or a social service worker gets injured because it's part of their job, then when they go to their supervisor, and I'm more specifically for police officers, when you say you want to kill yourself, they don't put you in jail, they don't put you in the hospital, they don't put you in a 16-week program absent of your family and every contact in the world. They're brought into a place similar to New Hope Field of Dreams. So we want to have these in every community, run by the community, in every area of Ontario, every area of Canada, and in fact, across the world. And then eventually these will be places that everybody could go to. But in order to get there, we need to heal a lot of the people who have been on the front lines going through this COVID response, who have been gravely affected by it. So the point is, when a police officer gets injured and they tell their supervisor that they want to kill themselves, they actually don't do any of those things that they do now. They do something different. They put them in touch with a medical doctor immediately, because the Police Services Act in Ontario says that they have to book them off sick. Then they're met by a trauma-trained psychologist, and I mean a trauma-trained psychologist, not a CBT or an EMDR or blah, 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 but a trauma-trained psychologist who knows about chopped off heads and mutilations and subways and you know, all of those things. And you're met by 2 peer-to-peer support people, not necessarily someone who's read a book, passed a test, wants to get promoted, but hopefully somebody like me who's been there and has come back and has said, hey, I know how you feel. Not I read how you feel. I know how you feel. Come over here and let's have a coffee together. And maybe that's another aspect of it. Educating people from the beginning about the injuries, not saying to them, like happened to me when I came on the job, here's a gun. Oh, by the way, answer this question. Will you be able to take somebody's life? If not, don't open the box. That's a big question. What if? Well, I think we found out what if with a lot of people, but the what if should have been, here, these are all of the resources that we have in case that happens. Because we know what you're going to go through in this job. And we don't want you to drink. We don't want you to get into domestics. We don't want you to take that stuff home with you. So the journey we go through is all these rocks in our backpack. We just put them there. And our journey through New Hope and collaborating with other people is to help people take these rocks out one at a time. recognizing your thoughts and your emotions, because they were valid in that time. You were scared, you were sad, you were upset. But because they told you you couldn't be, or the uniform said you couldn't, that doesn't mean they weren't real. Let's acknowledge those. And one at a time, we break them. Your amygdala back here on the left side starts to get a little bit less swollen over time and time and time. Your headaches stop that go up into here. Your confusion stops because now your brain is processing all three areas. It intakes, it figures out, and it spits out, because this area here is full of stuff you can't figure out. True story. So once we figure this out, take all those little rocks out, including the generational ones, the ones that were put in there by our ancestors that didn't milk cows and shuck corn. They did other things. My heritage is English, Irish, and Scottish. What did they do 1,000, 1,500 years ago? Rape and pillage? Yep, I think they might have. So how does that change the DNA and the RNA of people born of those people? Either you're scared out of your mind or you're doing the other side of things. Auschwitz, like, think about any culture, native culture. Just go back. Think, it's not your mom's fault. It's not your dad's fault. It's not your grandfather's fault. It's your it's your responsibility to recognize that, stand up and say no more. I want to learn how to milk cows and shuck corn. I don't want to do what they did. I don't like what they did.
Yes, that's a great idea, because some people, they said, okay, I had a childhood trauma, or I took it from my grandma or my ancestors. But what about you? Are you responsible for your life? What are you going to do for your life? So even if you have been traumatized in your childhood, or you have transgeneration traumas, still you can do a lot of things for yourself. You can advocate for your own health, and you can change a lot, as you said. You have a lot of knowledge about health. I can see
I've
about
been through a journey.
nutrition, health, and yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
part of, like I said, what we're doing here. Through my journey of research, I'm just trying to learn all aspects of who we are and why we're here, and I have figured out the majority of that, which has actually saddened me a lot based on the world that we're in right now. But it's really given me a really in-depth understanding about how to change who we are on what I say 9 levels. The 3 are your spirit, body, and your soul. And your spirit, from my experiences, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The body is the mind, like I said, the heart and the stomach. And your body is your mind, heart, and your stomach. And then your soul is your mind, will, and your emotions. So once you get all 9 of those in line with perfection, you stand in the truth, you stand in love. When somebody says you suck, you know you don't. And you can say, I appreciate your perspective of how you see me, and I acknowledge your truth. Thank you. I love you. But I know my truth, and I'm not going to absorb your perspective, which is true. I get it. Yeah.
So, Jason, you have a website here. What do you have there? New Hope. Oh, that's the one you talk about, New Hope Field.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
actually a website that Durham College helped us develop. We are working collaboratively with our local colleges. Fleming College out of Peterborough, Lindsay area did an environmental constraints report on the property last year to identify all the wildlife and all the trees and the everything, because part of what we're doing is also improving the carbon footprint on the property. We're going to be, like I said, using self-sustainable structures. We're looking at hempcrete and straw bale construction, rainwater harvesting, even getting deep into like electromagnetic induction, and having the colleges actually use their brains and come up with a very unique community where we don't need the world to survive. We can just sustain on ourselves. So on maybe 5 years from now, this is a long-term goal, what we're doing in a phased-in approach, one bit by one bit. But our eventual goal is to be self-sustained, and then, like I said, to reach out to other communities out there and say, hey, try this, see if this works for your people. And the other aspect is actually to prove what we're doing is working. And when I say what we're doing, I mean it's everybody. Like, everybody's inclusive of this. New Hope Field of Dreams is an umbrella that brings people in. We don't debrand people. We don't say we're going to take your ideas and say they're ours, because they're not. This is a family. The hand doesn't do what the foot does. The heart, we got to be here in the center of the heart. So it is a big, expansive project, but as we take small steps, we get the right people involved for the right reasons. I think we're going to make a big change in the mental health system, and getting back to what I call the roots of creation, getting back to what the Creator gave us here on earth to survive. And one of those things that He gave us, most importantly, is each other. And we have to use each other. We have to understand each other. We have to love each other. And we have to grow with each other through that understanding of what is forgiveness. And how do we obtain that goal of truly forgiving that person that raped you, or that person who didn't acknowledge that trauma? And we could go on about different things that are very, very bad that happen to us. But understanding why they happen is where the healing comes from.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jason, for being here. I really enjoyed and learned so many things from you. And hopefully, we can continue bringing you in this show and enjoy talking to you. Thank you so much.
I'm very blessed to be here. Thank you, Dutch.
Thanks.